Hello, I'm Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, and here to give you the updates of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. So it is currently the eve of October 25th, 2023 in the United States, and the morning of October 26th, 2023 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, Israel is now confirming that of the 220 hostages, those are people kidnapped on October 7th into the Gaza Strip, held by Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, of the 220 that have been identified, 138, that is over half, are people with foreign nationality, that is either dual citizens, Israel and another nationality, or solely citizens of another country. This is important because it was reported initially that Hamas may release people with foreign nationality or dual citizens before any hostage exchange or negotiations. Possibly related to that, Qatar announced today that there has been progress in its negotiations for the release of hostages and called upon Hamas to release all civilian hostages, specifically the women and children, without expecting reciprocity from Israel. And a diplomatic source that is associated with the negotiations between Qatar and Hamas told the Associated Press, AP, today that Hamas may be considering a large release of civilians, among others, because it did not anticipate having so much success in the October 7th attack. It had planned for kidnappings and hostages, but had not planned for so many, and quoting, now they have all these hostages and they don't know what to do with them. So it is possible that this is the reason that Hamas may be persuaded to release some of these hostages to allow for more effective negotiations later on. And last report related to the hostages, the World Health Organization today called on Hamas to release all the civilian hostages in relation to humanitarian aids or for medical needs. Now on to the ongoing fighting within the Gaza Strip. There were continuous rockets and missiles, as every day, fired. There were specific barrages that were sent towards the center of Israel as well as to the south. So rockets today were fired at Ashdod, Nitzan, Sufa, Ashkelon, and there were heavy barrages into the Gush Dan and Petah Tikva area. There was also some direct hits in buildings in Rishon LeZion, and several people were injured. Hamas also stated that it fired a missile towards Eilat, which this is the most southern city in Israel, and if this is in fact true, it will be the farthest south that Hamas has managed to fire a rocket. Strategically, this may be significant because it means that Hamas is improving its ability to fire not only from the north of Gaza, but also from the south. Regarding the IDF retaliations, the IDF intensified its bombing campaign today throughout the Gaza Strip, but primarily focusing in Gaza City, and the IDF Chief of Staff stated that the current bombardments are meant to improve the positioning of the ground units when they invade the Gaza Strip. In addition, the IDF today made explicit threats against some of the Hamas leaders, and specifically the Al-Qassam spokesperson Abu Ubaida, who is known for only appearing in public with his face covered, was shown today in an IDF movie that was released with his face exposed, IDF indicating that they know who he is, and publishing his real name, Hadifa Kakhlot. So this is part of possibly the IDF building campaign that is coming after the top-ranking leaders of Hamas. Associated with that, the head of the Northern Han Yunis Brigade in Hamas, Taysir Mabashar, was assassinated today. This is only important because he was a prominent figure in the movement and a personal associate of Mohammed Def, the top-ranking leader in Hamas's military wing. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip, there are 6,546 Palestinians that were killed. Many of these were killed in the last 24 hours as the IDF intensified its bombings. Moving on to the humanitarian situation. UNRWA, the UN Relief and Work Agency, the agency specifically deals with Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, stated today that if fuel does not enter the Gaza Strip within the next 24 hours, they will, I'm quoting, have to make some very hard decisions. The organization stated that it needs fuels to run its 150 shelters and medical facilities, stating that they have over 600,000 people that are within these different facilities. Now, this may also be important and related to the initial report on hostage negotiations, because initially it was stated that while Hamas has offered or stated that it would release civilians or foreign nationals, it was then rumored that this may be done in exchange for fuel. Israel right now is refusing to allow any fuel to enter the Gaza Strip, primarily because Hamas uses the fuel to run its rockets and also to run generators and to run fans and air conditionings that pump oxygen into the underground tunnels. So possibly, in association with Hamas's impending release of more hostages in the coming day, there may be a fuel exchange. That is all speculation. There was a fourth truck convoy that entered the Gaza Strip today carrying humanitarian aid. This carries food, water, and medicines. It was reported initially there were going to be 20 trucks entering today. A lot of these were held back due to security checks. It is unclear as of this point how many of them crossed over. Confirmed that 8 crossed over. Unclear if the rest managed to before the crossing was closed. Moving on to the West Bank, the IDF has continued its clampdown on Hamas operatives in the West Bank. Nearly 60 members of Hamas were arrested in the last 24 hours. Among others, there has been intensified violence from settlers against Palestinians, alongside flare-ups of Palestinian altercations with the IDF. President Biden today specifically, in his speech, referenced the settler violence and said this is pouring more fuel onto the flames. Moving on to the north, after yesterday there were rocket attacks from Syria into the Golan Heights and the IDF retaliated. Syria today reported that 8 members of the Syrian army were killed in the IDF retaliation. In addition, Hezbollah today continued its ongoing low-level escalations. There were several Hezbollah rockets and anti-tank missiles fired at IDF outposts, and one of them managed to hit the town of Kiryat Shmona that is by now largely evacuated. The IDF today carried intense retaliations against Hezbollah in Lebanon. There were 5 different IDF attacks against units that were either sending or had just sent mortar fires and rockets. The IDF also announced that it destroyed a Hezbollah military camp and a lookout post. In addition, a long-range missile today was fired from Lebanon and intercepted near the Galilee area. Hamas later claimed that they had fired a missile to the north, so it may be related to this missile. Unclear at this point. By now, Hezbollah is reporting that 43 of its members have been killed since the war began. Another important development that occurred is it was publicized today there was a meeting between the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Ziad Nakhala, who usually resides in Syria but was at this meeting in Beirut, and number 2 in Hamas, Salah al-Aruri, who resides in Lebanon. This is important because it is unclear when this meeting actually took place, but the fact that it was publicized today may indicate either that the organizations are planning to intensify their coordination, or it may also be Hamas trying to mount pressure on Hezbollah and show we are coordinated and we want Hezbollah to enter into the fray, possibly strengthening this. After the meeting was publicized, al-Aruri stated to the Al-Manar network in Lebanon that Hamas is holding regular meetings with all the resistance movements and that Hezbollah's struggle is the same struggle that Hamas is fighting and everyone should be fighting as one. So Salah al-Aruri has historically always wanted to create this multi-front war against Israel, and this could be part of the pressure that Hamas is trying to mount. Again, it could also be that the meeting occurred today. That is unclear. What is for sure is that the leaders of these different organizations are coordinating with each other regarding future steps. On to some of the political trends that occurred today. The Czech Republic Prime Minister met with Netanyahu in Israel, as well as the Austrian Chancellor also visiting Israel. In addition, the U.S. put forth in the UN Security Council a resolution that would condemn Hamas and call for the release of all hostages, which was vetoed by Russia and China. Russia, in turn, put forth a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and accusing Israel of attacking the hospital in Gaza Strip and other significant attacks. That did not pass in the Security Council. In addition, after the election of Mike Johnson to be Speaker of the House, he stated that his first order of business is to approve the U.S. aid package to Israel. So this is part of President Biden's ongoing promises of aid to Israel. That looks like that may be coming forth any day now. In addition, the president of France, Macron, after visiting Israel, met today with the King of Jordan and met with the President of Egypt. In a joint statement with the President of Egypt, President of Egypt, Al-Sisi, stated that Israel's intent to destroy Hamas is overextending itself and will take years. And similar to that, French President Macron was the first of the international leaders that visited Israel that stated that while Israel can and possibly should carry out ground attacks against the terror units in the Gaza Strip, any massive ground invasion of Gaza would be a grave mistake for Israel. So while the entire quote-unquote Western world is standing behind of Israel's right to defend itself and right now supporting all of Israel's moves, Macron is the first to publicly say, but a massive ground invasion would be a mistake. In addition, the Turkish President Erdogan today stated, in response to the statements of the Secretary General of the UN yesterday and all of the turmoil that came up as a result of it, Turkish President Erdogan stated that Hamas is not a terror group, but rather a freedom-fighting group that is fighting a legitimate struggle to liberate its land. Now, the reason that Erdogan is saying this is likely because it was published 2 days ago that Turkey had asked the Hamas leaders to evacuate from Turkey when the attack occurred, and it is possible Erdogan is now trying to hedge his bets or trying to purify his name or something like that with regards to the Palestinian struggle. So all of a sudden he's coming out in support of Hamas. Unclear at this point if there's any meaning behind these statements. Moving on to some of the future speculation of the ground invasion of the Gaza Strip and what is the future of Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu today made a long press statement in that he stated that the goals of the war remain to destroy Hamas militarily and its ruling capability of the Gaza Strip, as well as secure the release of all hostages. Now, this is important because this is somewhat of a change in rhetoric. In the opening days of the war, Israel was stating that it is fighting to destroy the Hamas movement regardless of the hostage situation. The fact that Netanyahu is now saying the goals of the war are simultaneously destroying the Hamas military capabilities and ruling capabilities, as well as returning the hostages, may be an indication of the pressure that Israel is under to hold off the ground invasion until the hostage situation, at least those hostages who are foreign nationals, is resolved. A lot of reports have been coming out that Netanyahu is under heavy pressure from President Biden and other foreign leaders to hold off the invasion. So this may be what's behind Netanyahu's change, that actually the hostages are also part of the considerations regarding when Israel is going to invade or not. This was bolstered also by the fact that today Netanyahu spoke to President Biden again, and it was reported that they again discussed releasing the foreign nationals and allowing those Gazans, the Palestinians with foreign citizenship, to flee the Gaza Strip. Moving on to some other reports, the Wall Street Journal today reported that European and American governments are urging Israel to slow down its retaliations. This include also the aerial bombardments, as well as any possible ground invasion, in order to minimize civilian casualties. And again, they are calling on Israel to consider the day after plan. So there's more and more reports that the international community, led by the United States, is quite concerned that while Israel may have the capability of overthrowing the Hamas movement, Israel has not thought out what comes next. And in addition to that, a second report in the Wall Street Journal bolstered the initial reports I said before, saying that Israeli and U.S. sources are reporting that Israel has agreed to postpone the ground invasion into the Gaza Strip until the U.S. deploys anti-aircraft and anti-missile batteries in the area, and in order to allow for as many hostages to be released before any such ground invasion occurs. So that is part of the ongoing considerations regarding if and when Israel is going to actually invade the Gaza Strip. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.